When I talk about autistic life in neurotypical company, someone always asks me about meltdowns. Do I still have them? What do they look like or feel like? And what are they? Type autistic meltdown into any search engine and you'll find descriptions and even videos of children screaming, crying and pleading with their parents, occasionally violently, and sometimes to little avail. Those asking questions wonder what it might look like if an adult were to do the same. Isn't it embarrassing? They ask. I'd be mortified if I did that in public. It's very obvious when I'm asked questions like that most non-autistic people have very little idea of what a meltdown actually is. So this video is for them and anyone else who knows an autist of any age. Today we'll explore what is a meltdown, why do they happen, and can anything be done about them? Before we go into what a meltdown is, let's be clear what it is not. It's not a tantrum. It's not attention seeking. It's not manipulation. It's not sour grapes. It's not an attempt to hurt anyone else. It's not something we can be conditioned or trained out of. And it's not something that happens without warning. A meltdown is a reaction to external stress. It's a brain event brought on by being pushed beyond our limits. Like someone passing out when physical pain gets too much, we melt down when our emotional pain is unbearable. It's an explosion of emotion provoked by the actions of other people or the environment we're in. The stresses build up until eventually they detonate in a flood of anger, fear, desperation and resentment. It's the cumulative result of being persistently rejected, of being ignored, and of being disbelieved. Think of a meltdown as an emotional volcano. Beneath every active volcano lies a magma chamber, a cavern filled with molten rock and superheated gases bubbling and circulating. It stays dormant for years until the pressure builds so high that it bursts through the cap of the volcano, violently spewing magma, rocks and ash for miles around with devastating effect. In a meltdown, the magma is emotion. It can be distress caused by sensory overloads, resentment of being mistreated, anger at unfairness, disappointment at ignorance, or even grief or loss. The thin veneer of socially acceptable behaviour we all of us hide behind is pierced by the unbearable pressure of emotion, forcing all those feelings out with astonishing speed. There may be tears, screams, angry or confrontational language and physical lashing out. No two autistic meltdowns are the same, because no two people or situations are identical. The feelings and stressors will always be unique to the situation and to the individual. The only consistent factor is the relative pressure of the emotional magma chamber against the restraining force of social acceptability. When the pressure exceeds the strength of social restraint, meltdowns are inevitable. Like volcanoes, there are warning signs too. Long before a volcano is about to erupt, we may observe noxious gases leaking through the cap, or an increase in temperature as those gases heat up the air around them. In order to detect invisible gases or sense the subtle changes in temperature, though, we may need sensitive instruments or specialised training. And the same is true when an autist is building up to bursting. The more you pay attention to and trust the autist in your life, the more likely you will recognise the subtle signs well in advance. When a volcano is close to eruption, there are signals that are easier to spot, like earth tremors. In meltdowns, the most obvious one is that we might protest at what's being asked of us. We try to tell people that we're distressed, and why, but it may be ignored or misinterpreted. Even those of us who don't speak try to make it clear we are uncomfortable in our facial expressions, our body language, or noises we make. You'll also likely see us stimming more. Stimming, as described in the video above, helps us to concentrate and take control of our emotional states. When we're nearing a meltdown, you might see an increase in us rocking, flapping, or fidgeting. We may start biting our lips, chewing our nails, twisting or tugging our hair, or even reciting or singing to ourselves. If none of this is recognised as a signal that things might be getting too much for us, then the next stage could be a meltdown. Our emotions go boom, and no amount of pleading with us, shouting at us, or attempts to restrain us will stop the flow. It will continue until the stresses have gone or we've exhausted ourselves. Why do we usually think of meltdowns as a uniquely autistic phenomenon, though? Why doesn't everybody have them? Well, non-autistic people do express strong negative emotions all the time. People break down in tears, get angry with others, become irritated with things around them, lose their temper, and start arguments. You don't see autistic people do any of those things anywhere near as often, to the point that there's an unhelpful myth about us lacking or not understanding emotions. As autists, we learn very young that people don't listen to us when we try to communicate our distress, or they can't comprehend the things that upset us. We get accused of being angry or miserable, even when we're not. So before long we give up on trying to express those things. Without a regular outlet of our emotions, they build up for days, weeks or months until something pushes the big red emotional launch button and they're released. What makes an autistic meltdown different to an everyday expression of sadness, fear or anger is the sheer amount of pent-up emotion behind it. Autistic people who are listened to and believed when they try to express or explain their discomfort are far less likely to build up the emotional pressure that leads to a meltdown in the first place. Many adult autists don't experience meltdowns in the way we did as children, and some of us rarely melt down at all. Is it something we grow out of? Since autism is part of who we are all our lives, the potential for meltdowns is always within us. So, why the change? Those who jump to conclusions about us growing out of aspects of our autistic natures, who claim that symptoms get milder as we get older, or try to profit from therapies or treatments they claim made improvements to us, are either missing or willfully ignoring the one big difference between children and adults: control. As adults, we have far more control over the stimulus we choose to expose ourselves to, and we can avoid those which overwhelm us. A child doesn't ever have that level of choice. Everything is decided for them by adults. Parents decide where they go, who they spend time with, what they eat, and when they get up and go to bed. Teachers decide what they learn and how they learn it. Doctors and social workers usually talk to parents about their children rather than to the child themselves. Grandparents, aunts and uncles, family, friends and more, all to some degree dictate children's lives in one way or another. Adults can make decisions for ourselves that massively reduce the amount of stress there is in our lives, so the build-up of emotion might not reach the boiling point of meltdown so often. We don't have complete freedom, though. We still have to do many things we find difficult, but by managing them and not allowing them to happen all at once, we can keep meltdowns to a minimum. Some things we still have little choice in as adults, or in some cases the alternatives are more painful. One fine example is earning a living. The modern workplace can be a sensory nightmare for an autist, not to mention the endless stress of workplace politics and social frippery. If we want to live above the poverty line, we must endure it and do our best to ensure that when it gets too much, we melt down away from disapproving, ignorant eyes. For this reason, an autist's home is a refuge, a sanctuary away from the terrors of the world. We can build a nest of calm, of our own routines, and fill it with the things that help us wind down from the almost unbearable pressure of the world. It's not just a place to relax, it's a place to recover. There is another element of control as an adult, though. Self-control. All children, whether autistic or not, are less in control of their emotions than adults. We learn over years of painful experience that the meltdowns we had as children often made our lives harder and damaged the bonds that we hold dear. We become aware of our own warning signs and how to keep a lid on things. We find ways of extracting ourselves from situations when it's close to becoming too much. We broaden our range of stims to find new ways of staying just below the meltdown threshold, so we can allow ourselves to fall apart when we're out of sight of others. It's a combination of masking and damage limitation. Some of us begin to internalize our meltdowns too. Rather than explode, we implode and shut down. We withdraw into ourselves. We lose our speech and become unresponsive to others. We may curl up into a ball or just rock, staring into space. After our meltdowns brought us nothing but punishment or conditioning, giving us something else to be scared of, our response may switch to cutting ourselves off. We're conscious, we can likely hear you and understand you, but the emotional, responsive part of us has isolated itself, cocooned itself deep inside to shelter until the storm of stressors has calmed. As an onlooker, or someone who cares about us, what can you do when one of us melts down or shuts down? How can you help us back to where we were before the meltdown happened? Nothing. That's not a defeatist statement. The one thing you can do is give us as much of nothing as you can. If you don't already know what was the final straw that pushed us beyond the brink, then simply empty the environment around us of as many stimuli as you can. Give us as much emptiness as you can. Remove noise, remove bright lights, remove smells, and remove people, even yourself if necessary. Give us peace and give us solitude. You can't coax us out of it. You can't talk us down. And if you should try to confront it with harsh words or restraint, you will only prolong it. Be kind. Be gentle. Take us away to a quiet spot and then keep your distance whilst our emotions subside and we become ourselves again. Give us this, and our meltdown or our shutdown will subside much quicker, and the damage to our souls will be less severe. Afterwards, we will be exhausted, both physically and emotionally. We might not be able to tell you what the trigger was until much later, so you'll need to be patient too. The best way to stop meltdowns, though, is to prevent them happening in the first place. And the best way to do that is through communication. Listen to us and believe us when we tell you that something is painful or stressful to us. Often, it will challenge your expectations. It might even sound bizarre or ridiculous to you sometimes, but don't ignore it or question it. Have faith in us. If the autist in your life can tell you what pushes their distress buttons, then take it seriously and be prepared to act on it. People who care for autists who don't speak often keep diaries of what happens in a day. When brain events like meltdowns happen, they can refer back to their notes to help them work out what went wrong. Everything is recorded, from who was present, what they were doing and saying, right down to what food was eaten on the day, what colour clothes everyone was wearing, and what smells were present. If this all sounds too much, think of the ways you accommodate all the non-autistic people in your life. Do you not worry about making people sad or distressed? Do you not care about forcing them to do things they don't like or enduring pain they don't need? Do you not mind your language around people, avoid sensitive topics, or dress appropriately for an occasion? Would you ignore someone you care about if you made them angry? Of course you wouldn't. You care about them and want them to be happy. You'll do your best to be a good partner, friend, parent, or sibling. That's how relationships work. If you're not willing to accommodate each other, then the relationship breaks down, and they either leave or you're stuck with someone who resents you. The difference when one person is neurotypical and the other is autistic is things that hurt or upset one may not hurt or upset the other. There may be things one enjoys but the other finds distressing. You'll never know what they are unless you listen to and trust them when they try to tell you. Don't dismiss them because their needs or their sensitivity seem unusual to you, or you've not heard of someone else feeling that way before. This goes both ways, because there are things which are everyday aspects of neurotypical life which make little sense to autists too. We have to try to accommodate neurotypical needs all our lives just to survive. Learn to know each other inside out and work out where compromises can be made and where they can't, how you can find ways of accommodating both sets of needs as fully as possible. When you take the time to communicate and have enough faith in someone to believe them, even when you can't relate to their feelings, then you have a strong relationship, a good relationship, a relationship that has the potential to last. Thank you for watching. Click here on the left to subscribe to the channel for more videos about autistic life, or here on the right to go straight to another film from the channel.